Welcome to Puro Politics, the political podcast of the San Antonio Express News. My name is Gilbert Garcia, Metro columnist, and I'm joined by
Kerry Clark, columnist, editorial writer.
Metro editor Greg Jefferson.
We still have 2 city council runoffs left, but as of now, there's only 1 new council member in San Antonio that we know of. Marc Whyte is an attorney. He has served on the city zoning commission, on the ethics review board. He was on a bond committee for parks, on the Port San Antonio board of directors. And very soon he will be the new city council member for the Northeast Side in District 10. Marc, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I wanted to start by asking you about this election cycle. You were in kind of an unusual situation. It was a kind of a sensitive situation because you had the incumbent Clayton Perry. He had this hit and run incident, and there were a lot of questions about whether he was going to decide to run for another term. And I think he was kind of in the process of deciding that. And you clearly had an interest in the seat. And I think you were trying to be sensitive to what he was, his decision-making process. How did you navigate your way through that?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. Mm-hmm. Clayton and I had talked about the potential for me coming in behind him for a couple of years. Yeah. He thought about running for a county commissioner several years ago, and so that's really when it first got on my radar. And certainly wasn't expecting things to turn out like they did at the end of last year. But, for me, first and foremost, Clayton's a friend. And so I didn't want to do anything to make him uncomfortable throughout the process. I wanted to give him time to navigate it in his own mind and talk to everybody around him that he needed to, all the while knowing that for him to go forward and run for his final term was going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to be ready in the event that he was going to choose to move on. And so, through a lot of conversations with him directly and others, we prepared to be able to run to do it. And then when he made the decision, we were ready to go.
Mm-hmm. So early on, by mid-November, a number of former District 10 council members and friends and allies of the councilman were talking with him, advising him not to run. Were you one of those?
So District 10 the former council folks are very active in the district. Mm-hmm. And they're also people that I've gotten to know over the past 4 or 5 years as I've really become involved with the district. Mm-hmm. And so there were a lot of discussions between us all about what was best for District 10. Mm-hmm. So I was in touch with them quite a bit. I know they were talking to Clayton. I was talking to Clayton, as I mentioned. And, the consensus from them, it's public now, of course, was that Clayton should move on. Mm-hmm. And I was honored that they thought that I'd be the guy that should come behind him.
Right. What was their primary concern? I mean, why did they? I mean, it seems kind of obvious why you did advise him not to run, but was it because he would be hamstrung? Would it be an embarrassment? Like, why? What was the motivation?
Yeah, I think there was 2 main reasons. One, of course, the good of the district. Clayton had sort of been sidelined a bit by the mayor, stripped of committee assignments and things like that. Was that going to continue if you were to win a 4th term? That wouldn't have been good for the district. So the district's interests were number one in being adequately represented at City Hall. Mm-hmm. The second thing, of course, was personal for Clayton. All of those folks care about Clayton, are friends of Clayton. Mm-hmm. And I think the consensus was if he was to continue, what would it be like for him dealing with the media and, constant questions about the incident, and they didn't want that for him.
Yeah. In 2018, you ran for state representative. This was a seat that Joe Strauss decided to vacate, and it was a race ultimately won by Steve Allison. And as I remember, there were a bunch of candidates in that Republican primary kind of bunched together. It was it was a very competitive race. What did you learn from the process of running that year that was helpful to you this time?
Yeah, well, I knew nothing back in 2018. I knew nothing except I wanted to do it. And, when I look at that race, it was a crowded field, sort of like this one was. But Steve, who of course is a great friend and sort of mentor to me now, Steve sort of was very prepared to get into that from the beginning. And that's really what I learned that helped me this time, is having all your ducks in a row before you even announce.
I mean, for example, this time you committed, was it $50,000?
Yeah.
I mean, you had some money to start out with even before you were.
Yep. I had knew I wanted to work the past 4 or 5 years to put some money aside in the event an opportunity would come along like this, so that I could hit the ground running in the campaign. Right. So the financial side was one, but then also the support. You know, Steve had lived in District 121 for years prior to running. He had been on the school board. He had developed relationships within the community that really set him up to do well in that race. And so for me, over the past 5 or 6 years with the Northeast Neighborhood Alliance and being on some of the other boards as the District 10 representative, all of that preparation set me up to where I think the voters felt, you know, here's a guy not coming out of nowhere, that's ready to do the job. And that may have been a difference between this race and back in 2018 for me.
Well, for those listeners and viewers who don't live in District 10, you are the guy coming out of nowhere. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and why it's important for you to be in the politics.
Yeah. Public service for me has always been something I've been interested in. And I tell the story, for me, it began back in really college. I got to go and see, you've probably heard me tell this story, but I got to go and see the George Bush Al Gore debate that was on Wake Forest campus back in 2000. And I remember leaving that debate that night thinking, man, here's two smart folks, but just with completely different ideas.
Those were some lively debates too.
Lively debates.
Black box.
Yeah. But I left that debate thinking, okay, these guys think completely differently about the direction the country should head. And it got me curious. And so from there, it was to law school, you know, to learn the law. And I started my practice here, but always knew that I thought my skill set fit public service. I like solving problems. And so in 2012, I reached out to Lyle Larson, and he and I went and had a beer. And I said, Lyle, you gotta help me do this. And he said, I'll help you, but you got to prove to me that you want it. I said, well, what do you want me to do? And he said, I want you to go block walking for Governor Romney in that Romney-Obama election.
Now somebody told me about this, and you went to Ohio, right? And it was like snowing, and
I said, no problem, Lyle, I'll do it, thinking I'd be, you know, somewhere here in Texas. And he said, but you got to go do it in Ohio.
This has to hurt.
It's tougher. It's got to be like Rocky IV or something. Okay. Oh my God.
And I did it. You know, a few weeks later, I'm in Ohio. And it's cold and it's rainy, and I'm knocking on doors for Governor Romney. But
how comfortable were you doing that? Because I mean, that's not everybody can do that.
It was my first time doing something like that.
And where in Ohio?
I was in
Blue Ohio or red
Hamilton
Ohio?
County, and you know, at first, you know, the first day or so, you know, it's a little jarring when people slam the door in your face or dogs are jumping at you and things like that. But I'll tell you, I loved it by the end of the week. Talking to folks, talking about the issues, how I thought Governor Romney could best help them was great. So I came back, and then from there, it was about getting to know other folks in the community. Councilman Gallagher then started putting me on the boards. And everywhere I was, I feel like, whether it was the Port of San Antonio or the Ethics Review Board, I was able to contribute to solving issues and advancing the ball. The Port of San Antonio, y'all are seeing what's going on there. You know, I'm proud that when I was there, the Innovation Center and everything was just coming to life, and we were able to help put the finishing touches on that to move that forward. So it's always been something that I've enjoyed doing. I've always been able to work with different groups of people, you know, conservative, liberal, you know, of all different races, genders, whatever it is, you know, always been able to work with folks, find common ground, advance the ball on what the issue is. And so I just think this really fits my skill set.
Now, during the campaign, you talked about your vehement opposition to Proposition A, which was a proposed charter amendment that would have decriminalized marijuana and abortion and expanded the city's cite and release program. Can you talk a little bit? It was defeated by a wide margin, but can you talk a little bit about the biggest concerns that you had about it?
I just think it would have increased crime. You know, we talked a lot on the campaign about we don't want to be San Francisco or Portland or one of those other cities, and some say, oh, well, isn't that a little bit of an exaggeration? I don't know. I think Proposition A would have sent the wrong message, and it would have encouraged folks that aren't looking to do good here in San Antonio to do those things. And I think we would have seen some of the same scenes you see in some of those other cities. We would have seen them here, and we don't want that.
I mean, most of the categories that were included in the cite and release program that was proposed are already part of the cite and release program. Graffiti would have been something that would have been added. But I think one of the things that I heard from people who opposed Prop A was that just having, even if in many of those cases people are already getting cited and not arrested, that the factor of having officer discretion in the minds of some of the opponents, there was a feeling that if someone knows that there's a possibility they could get arrested, if it comes down to shoplifting or running out of a bill at a restaurant or whatever. I mean, some of the examples that people have mentioned to me, that if they're aware of the possibility that they could get arrested, that is a deterrent in itself. Is that the way you look? Yeah,
absolutely. That's, perception is sometimes turns into reality. And so absolutely, it's not the kind of city cite and release in the first place, I think is a huge issue. And I don't know, we have time to go into it here, but I have a lot of problems with the cite and release program. That the district attorney has in place right now. So that's something we need to look at in the first place. But expanding it through Proposition A would have been bad. And then, a lot of people didn't talk about the justice director issue. Mm-hmm. I mean, this Proposition A to put in a justice director that was going to get to have a say over police issues and things moving forward, yet it's written in there that this person can have no law enforcement background at all. Just makes no sense to me, and I didn't like it.
Well, what issues do you have with that current cite and release program?
Well, again, I think,
what would you like to see changed about it?
Well, I think we need to look at it from top to bottom on what exactly, when are we letting these folks go? And I've talked to a bunch of officers during the campaign, and they would say, Marc, it takes between 2 and 3 hours to arrest somebody, take them down, put them through the booking process, and they're back on the street before dinner time. And so it really decreases police morale, is what I was hearing. And they would have these folks. One officer told me that he arrested somebody, and the guys in the back of the car, and was basically laughing, telling him like, I'm going to be back out there tomorrow. And so again, it comes down to when the criminals out there think they're not going to have to suffer any real consequences for what they do, in my opinion, they're going to be more likely to keep committing the crimes. And so we need to take a look at what exactly we're doing in terms of, who we're letting go and what sort of significant deterrent we can be to stop these things from happening in the future.
You've talked about wanting to try to reduce property taxes if possible. But I get the sense that you also want to enhance police funding.
Yeah.
And so how do you, I guess my question is it possible to reduce taxes at the local level any more than has been done? We have a homestead exemption now. Where where would that come from?
Well, I was happy to see that I think the mayor is on board with trying to double the homestead exemption that Councilman Perry helped get in place. That's a start. And some might say it's a little start, but it's something. To get property tax relief, we're gonna need to work with the state legislature. Obviously, there's only so much we can do here locally. But one of the things I talked about on the campaign is, again, have great relationship with Representative Allison and Lujan, and want to try to work with them, get more transparency in the process. People have suggested perhaps making the chief appraiser position here an elected position, which is maybe a slippery slope. I know.
That could be tough. That's a terrible idea. That is one of the worst.
But look, my point is we got to look at everything and try to get some meaningful relief to folks, because property taxes are killing people.
Well, if you increase the homestead exemption at the city level, does that mean budget cuts?
Well, I mean, it's going to take some money, that's for sure.
But
We got to find it.
Is there anything? I know that I hate to put you on the spot when you haven't been sworn in yet, but just from what you observed so far, I mean, are there areas where you think we could cut this? There's room for.
So I had my first meeting with Eric and the staff last week. And the first thing I did is I asked for the budget, and I have it right now on my desk, and I'm going through it. The nature of government, in my opinion, is there's always wasteful spending from D.C. to Austin, locally, I'm sure as well. I'm looking through that, and I think we need to, being a good steward of taxpayer funds is a top priority to me, and the homestead exemption is a good area where we can save some folks from money. And are we going to need it to get it from other places? Probably.
Do you support Nuremberg's plan, or do you want to see him go further?
I don't know the details of Nuremberg's plan, honestly. I just read somewhere, I think, that he's on board with trying to increase the homestead exemption, which is something that I talked about during the campaign. And so I love it. Right off the bat, we find something we can agree on.
As you go through the budget, will you take into account different areas of town and just historical inequities that have gone on through the years, like District 1, District 2 through 5, and as opposed to 8, 9, 10?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because District 10 gets treated like it's this north side district, that like it's District 9.
Close to District 2.
I know. I know. It's closer there than it is to District 9 in terms of median income and things like that.
That's true.
District 10 needs to get our fair share of the dollars. I'm going to be really pushing for that. If you drive up the northeast corridor of District 10, Perrin, Vital, and North, there's so many parts that are really run down, vacant buildings. It's time we do something about that. And so to your point, look, we got to spend our money in a way that's going to benefit all of San Antonio. I'm interested in making sure District 10 gets its fair share of the money this time.
Yeah. In November 2020, San Antonio voters, at the urging of Mayor Nuremberg, approved a 1/8 sales tax for a workforce development program, which we know is Ready to Work SA. It's gotten off to a slow start, but I want to get your thoughts on what are your just impressions so far? I think it's still a work in progress, obviously.
Yeah, only know a little bit about it. It's obviously not off to a good start at all. And from what I hear, it's the idea is good in theory, but again, it's always how do you, the devil's in the details, right? What's going on? Why isn't it succeeding? I don't remember the statistics, but I think there's been a bunch of folks that have made the first call or have applied to be in the program. And then somehow from there's a huge drop off.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but it sounds like operationally there needs to be some tinkering there to get it moving like it should be.
Right. So several years ago, the firefighters kind of led a really successful effort to get on the ballot basically a term limit for the city manager and a salary cap, which voters approve. We're hearing that there might be a movement, maybe through the Charter Review Committee, to undo that, to revisit it and put to voters basically the cancellation of those two. Would you support that or not? In other words, do you support having the city manager term limited and his salary capped?
I think we got to look at it. I think we're being hamstrung a bit by the city manager having this term limit. Eric's overall, I think, done a good job, and to lose him, I think would. And keep in mind, I'm just getting to know him. I'm just getting to know him. I've watched from afar, like everybody else has, the work he's done over the past few years. But term limiting him out, I think would be a detriment to the city.
Yeah. By the way, we're talking about 8 years. Just
yeah. So I definitely think we should relook at it.
I was asking about Ready to Work SA. I'm also curious about another ambitious program that the city has. We last year, as part of the city bond, we had $150 million housing bond, and the plan is to rehabilitate some existing housing and to build some new housing too. And there's no question San Antonio has an affordable housing problem, like a lot of cities do at this right now. I guess what I'm wondering is what's philosophically the idea of a city funding something like this or getting involved in not only rehabilitating housing but building new housing. Where does that sit with you?
I don't know the details of the plan. I do know that what they say 1 million people or so are going to be moving to San Antonio between now and 2040, I think it is. There definitely is a housing issue here in San Antonio. And what we do about it, I'm not sure. Rehabilitating rundown housing or facilities to make it livable for folks that need it at an affordable price point sounds good to me. It's always a matter of how do we get there. And so look forward to tackling that issue among the others.
Okay.
We were talking before the podcast, and you mentioned that the first council member that you heard from was Jalen McKee Rodriguez, and I thought that was interesting. And I mean, obviously, you all probably have some philosophical differences or ideological differences. What was the conversation like? Yeah,
I am positive he and I will not agree on everything.
Yeah.
Probably won't agree on everything with any of them, but it was very nice. It was about 10:45 or 11 that night. He called and had a very nice conversation with him. And, I told him what I've told all these other folks is I look forward to working with him on whatever the issue is. I mediate in my day job as an attorney. I'm a mediator. So I got folks in one room that want one thing, folks in the other room that want something completely different. And my job is to bring them together, find a solution so everybody can go forward. That's what I want to do with all these folks on council. And I got some relationships that I can, build off of, right? I've known Manny for 17 years. Adriana and I were on the ethics review board together. Melissa and I have a bunch of common friends. We'll see who ends up winning in District 7, but Marina and I were in Leadership San Antonio together. Clayton and Councilman Courage got a lot of things done together. So I enjoyed my call with Jalen. I've already, talked with Adriana and Melissa and the mayor, and my goal is to go in there and work with these folks to get things done for San Antonio. And, the most common thing I heard on the campaign was, "Oh, Marc, what are you doing? Why do you want to do this? You're going to be the lone voice, on the city council." And I said to everybody, if that's true, I'm gonna be a loud voice. We're gonna stand up for the things that the folks in District 10 believe in and what they want. But I don't think it has to be that way. I know a lot of these people. They're good people. They want to do right by San Antonio. And when you start there, I think there's always going to be common ground to be had. So just got to work at it.
Before we wrap things up, I wanted to ask you about the airport expansion, which I know there's been a lot of talk about that, and I think many people are excited about that. Clayton has indicated that he, I think at a recent council meeting that he had questions just about, where's some of the funding coming? Because there are some, I think some of that is still to be determined.
Yeah.
Going forward, when you look at this project, which seems to have a lot of possibility, a lot of potential for San Antonio, but also does have some question marks. It's a long-term project. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's in my backyard in District 10, and so I want to be very, very involved with the project moving forward. But I understand what Clayton's saying, right? I mean, how we get this thing funded and done properly will be of the utmost importance to me. It's sort of, people say it's sort of an island, the airport, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be funded through the operations that go on there. And it's something, though, the expansion that we need. Again, 1 million people moving here in the next 17 years. We need a better airport. I've talked with Eric about this some last week, and I think they've got a plan that probably needs some refining, but I'm excited to be a part of it. It's a big project, obviously, and I want to see it succeed.
Mm-hmm. Well, Marc, thank you so much for being part of the podcast, and good luck on City Council.
Yeah, thank y'all so much for having me. Yeah, thank you.
And for everyone listening, hope you all are doing well. We'll be back next week. Take care.